Yo, what's popping? I am back from the Defiant homestand and ready to lock in my power rankings. Above me is my pre-tournament power rankings. And you know what? Some things didn't quite go, but in the east side at least, it wasn't too bad. There's only one change, and that is going to be the Philadelphia Fusion ahead of the Guangzhou Charge. So obviously the bottom three teams don't play, and there's no teams that did make it above them, so they're not going to change at all. But the Charge and Fusion, the only real difference here is the Charge weren't even able to really take fights. It doesn't matter how consistent Jimmy is if MN3 is able to just pick them off. And MN3 in that meta at least, which we'll get a new meta soon, but in that one he was very consistent, I think, and very much a top tier damage player for the whole thing whenever he did play. So, for whatever reason, Carpe was in for the first 2 weeks, and that's just how it is. But the later 2 weeks, MN3 lights out the entire time, and it's just a damn shame that he didn't play more, really. Um, so yeah, it's just like it doesn't matter how consistent that charge backline is because they can only really be active in fights. If MN3 was able to consistently pick them off, didn't matter. So I still think the charge should be able to claw their way back from being the last in the region because the last team in the region does not get a chance in play-ins. So I think Charge probably will be able to move ahead of the Valley. They'll only need like two more wins to them in the next 6 games, or just one more win than them, probably. I don't know the thing. I'll probably make a video on that some other time this week, but I think they'll be the ones, and they should be the ones here. I think they're playing much better, and this is still a success. Just making the tournament was a success for Charge. We didn't expect them to really go deep, not really. It's nice to see them some improvement, but when it comes down to it, they're still not able to compete with Fusion Dynasty Dragons when it really matters. And Fusion, M3 and Zest are good, but Soul Dynasty, the team coordination is better. The DPS are able to keep up just as well, but they're not able to keep up to the Dragon. Like, I don't do tier breaks because it's like, I feel like they don't really mean much, but there does seem to be something there between both Philly and Seoul Shanghai. I'm just not going to put them in because a lot of this meta was who shows up on any given day. It just happened that Shanghai was showing up every day, and then Seoul was showing up every day, but Shanghai showed up earlier. You know what I mean? But Shanghai, just a dominant team. Honestly, if I was doing a combined, I probably would put them ahead of Dallas. It's very hard to say. It is very hard to say, but Who Are You was just so good. And the trust that this team has to that everyone's going to be doing their job, everything's going to fall into place, and just a raw mechanical skill from Lip, Who Are You, even Void, everyone was popping off in Shanghai. And where can you fault this team? There's no real massive errors in this team, and they're so damn good. So that's going to be it for APAC. Not a whole lot to say because the tournament kind of went according to schedule, right? But NA, number 13, number 12, no changes, no surprises. But that number 11, it's going to switch up quite a bit. We have Washington coming in at number 11. So Washington do fall, and they got put out the tournament first. But they did their classic thing. They have a map 5 series against the top seed, as they do. Standard Washington, and then they lose in the next round. And it wasn't like a particularly great win, or like they did get pretty handed. They had one good map where Decay showed up, but other than that, pretty quiet. And the biggest problem with Washington is, of course, they just had one mode, and that was aggress. Took Dallas 2 maps to figure it out, and they did it. Toronto kind of played into it a little bit at times, but they were pretty much able to just absorb that aggression, force them back with the Ash, and it was pretty solid. And Washington never really have any other ideas. They just said, "Oh, we're going to do this. If it doesn't work, we lose," and they lose 2 in a row. Out. So I think just because they didn't really have any other thought process, that has to be bottom three. I think at least. And there are 3 teams above them that didn't make the tournament. I think those teams would probably beat them most of the time. So yeah. And then we have the Vancouver Titans also falling. So Vancouver did have a decent showing against Shock and then just lose to Florida. Hydron and Checkmate had an insane game. The thing with Vancouver is King really didn't step up as you need him to. You needed King to be better to actually have a good chance. Yeah, they were still playing well. They were still disengaging, and all that stuff was really good from them. But pound for pound, Checkmate was much better than King. Hydron kept up with Aspire, and then after that, you don't have a lot going for the Titans. You need Aspire to be the best player in the lobby to have a really solid chance of winning, and it didn't come true. So the Titans just lose, and that over reliance on Aspire mostly kind of hurts him a lot. And Aspire's not the kind of player that you like. He's very good, but I think he still needs some more support. He can't. He's not a proper. He's not proper. You can't just pray that he's going to carry you into even out of the bottom eight or the top eight rather, or whatever you want to say, out of eighth, seventh finish. And they were able to even lose to the Florida Mayhem, who I keep underrating even still. Coming in at this is number 9 is going to be Boston. Now I know Boston didn't make the tournament, but and yes, it is early. They just played like a single match against Vancouver with their new crowd, but I think there's a lot of potential there. Yes, it's entirely reasonable to have them bottom 3. I wouldn't blame you if you have them bottom 3. I wouldn't put them any higher than this either. This as high as I think any sane person is allowed to put Boston. So you can reason them below Washington because they haven't shown enough. I think maybe that was just a one-off, sure, but I think just because they had so little scrum time, they know what they were doing. They played so much better than Vancouver. Not so much better, but they did play a very good game against Vancouver. Kind of gave a tell of like, Vancouver's not all that, and we needed to tone down a little bit on Vancouver. And the results show that that's kind of the right mindset we should have had. Maybe I was I didn't have them high. I still have Vancouver bottom 5, but they're not all that. They weren't all that, and I guess a lot of people realize that. But so coming in at number 8, I believe this is 8. Yeah, is the Florida Mayhem. This is where I'm going for Florida. And even though Florida finished top 4 in the tournament, they're not top 4 in it. Let's not get this twisted, right? Yes, I should give the double flex support a bit more credit. It does seem to be a genuinely good strategy that teams just didn't want to put time into, because why would you do that when you can just continue to run what you're running and it works everywhere instead of splitting the scrim time. And for Florida, it came in clutch. It helped them a lot. And the biggest thing for Florida is Checkmate really stepped up in this tournament, I felt, and he never really had a bad performance. He was very scary and outclassed a lot of Genjis he's met up against. Like, they lose to Houston 3-0. Of course they do. No Surmer Jet at land. That's huge. That's genuinely huge. And Houston were great. But then better Genji matchup against King, better Genji matchup against Backbone, and then although they were pretty close, but although had an unreal tournament. Like, phenomenal tournament from Aldo. The best Overwatch we've seen this season from him. Not even close. But Checkmate was still able to put in some work there. And the reason Florida was able to go so close with Defiant was because, they let them go on the Circuit Royale. They let them play that double flex support. And they didn't really, maybe they thought they had an answer and they didn't. So I believe I didn't give Florida enough credit, but at the same time, I don't know. I don't feel like putting them higher because, yeah, I put London higher than them, and that's because London's up next, right? Oh no, it's Houston up next, and then London. So this is my order for these guys. So these 3, they all kind of like they're in the circle of suck in a way because Houston rolls Florida, but then Florida rolls London, and then Houston get rolled by Toronto, and then Florida put up a fight and things like that. And you'll notice, yeah, I still have Atlanta and Gladiators above them, but calm down. So the thing about this is London definitely had the most sound, like, well-rounded team play, and they knew what they were doing, but I don't know why, but they just could not get that final map against Florida, and they really should, by all means. They should have been able to beat them, but they just cannot. It's like something about these tournaments, they always end up going out earlier than they probably should. You could have Florida above London. I think that's reasonable, but I still think London are a more solid team. And maybe it's a mentality thing, and I guess you have to take that into account, right? You have to think, well, can this team actually get top 4? Is there a mental block that's just stopping this team in its tracks? And maybe there's some truth in that, but the actual gameplay London was outputting, more often than not, was very, very solid. And I think they should have been able to beat Florida, and they just weren't able to. And then Houston in the middle. Houston are carried by Pelican and Merritt in this meta. The backline's not doing anything spectacular. Dante's not doing anything spectacular. and then whenever they match up against teams that have a that DPS that can match them, and then that's it. Like Houston, they run into Toronto. Hisu was on his game, although was on his game. Suddenly, the DPS is not a severe advantage for Houston, and they just lose because Hoffa and the Toronto backline were just better. Um, just that's it. Houston have to need their DPS to do all the work. It felt like in this specific meta, it felt like it was just the Houston DPS, and they were exceptional. I thought they were the scariest DPS line going into this tournament in NA, but you need more than that to place higher. And Houston weren't quite there. They needed more. And because they relied on the DPS so heavily, and compared to London's really good team play, I'm giving London the edge over them, and I'm giving Florida below both of them still. You can put Florida above them. You can put those three in any order, probably. No one's going to get mad at you. I'm still sleeping on Florida, probably. My bad. That's just it. And then, of course, we have people that are going to get mad at me because I have two teams that did not make the tournament in the top 5. But guess what? I think if they were in this tournament, they both place top 5. Like, that's just how it is. That's just it. They didn't have a good first start of this tournament, but I'm talking about the now. I'm talking about the now with these teams. How their most recent performances were. Gladiators in Atlanta had pretty damn good performances. Maybe you could put London above Atlanta. Sure. I like that, actually. Maybe I should have done that. But that's it. And then let me talk about the actual teams at the top there. Dallas above everyone else in NA. I think that's pretty safe to say. They just rolled a shot. I actually think Toronto would have had a better shot against Dallas in the finals if they were able to get there, but Proper's too good. So, Defiant just win that. Or not win, lose, sorry. Because Proper is a different beast. But the team play of Dallas is just too good to lose to Shock. Like, you need more than just Proper. Edison is different Kilo. It's a diff all around by Dallas. Hanbin was going insane. Hanbin had an insane tournament, as expected. But I think it says more that Washington and London took 3 maps total between them, and Shock took 0 in 7 maps. Like, it was a 7-0 sweep from Dallas to Shock. That's insane. I don't know, whatever it was about Dallas, maybe they were just specifically good at targeting down Proper as a carry. But Shock didn't hold a candle to them the entire time. They had some decently close maps, like the first one. I forget what map it was, the first cough, but it was decently close. Like there was some fight back from Shock there. There were some times where Hanbin had to clutch up. Hanbin had a crazy clutch earlier in the tournament too. It was Legion, but head and shoulders above Shock, I think is safe to say. I don't know if that's a matchup thing or if that doesn't matter who they played. It would have been a 7-0. But that's going to my power rankings. People are still going to not believe in the Gladiators Atlanta reign. That's fine. I think they would have made a pretty good run in this tournament. Florida would not have been top 4 in this tournament if the Gladiators or reign were there, but they weren't. So no need to talk about that any longer. So let me know where I'm wrong, of course, as always. Let me know your power rankings. Like this video if you like it. Subscribe for more daily Overwatch League content. Thank you so much for watching and have yourself a good one. Deuces.